We are discussing affirmative action, and guess what? We may not agree, and that's fine. This is Jobob Unlimited. It starts right now.
Actually, Jobob.
Jobob is a model citizen.
Live from the dingiest of dingy bunkers. My name is Jobob. This is Jose Roberto Unlimited. We got our friend Cecil here joining us. So just to set this up really quick, let's see. I had posted something on the internet, as I do, which is a job of mine. You took exception to it, which is totally fine. I agree. I agree with discourse, which is disagreement. And you know what I do a lot is, if it gets to a point where it's, the chat is getting ridiculous, I say, hey, you want to come on and talk about it? And most people don't say yes. So appreciate you doing that. You want to introduce yourself, where you're from, what do you do, all that sort of stuff?
Oh, perfect. I'm glad you asked me that question because I want to ask you that question in a moment too.
Totally.
But yeah, my name's Cecil. I work in sales right now, but I graduated from San Jose State University, competed there, track and field, D1. Wasn't too successful, but it was an experience. One thing, that's for sure. I was originally born Nigerian.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, moved here 9 years ago. And if I want to go in depth, because I think this is going to be important to my entire argument on this podcast or on this show, essentially. But got into the U.S., lived with my grandma for 2 years. This was during high school. She left. I stayed in the U.S., raised my sister, ended up having to work to put myself through school. Sister went into foster care because, well, I'm not an adult at that point. And then I transferred to JUCO because, well, first off, I couldn't afford all the application fees. Second off, I know there are certain fees that you can like fee waivers you can use, but I wasn't aware of this during my application process. I literally took the SAT, I want to say 2 months before I was supposed to apply. So this was all going on because of a lack of resources, lack of direction in terms of having an adult in the household or whatever the case is. Yeah. But I was successful enough to go through JUCO, transferred to San Jose State to continue my competition in track and field. Ended up with a degree in biology and minor in chemistry. And now I work sales. I'm also an artist. If no one has ever heard of me, please go check me out. I don't know if you're going to add anything, but I post all my art on Instagram, and I have an art station as well. But I want to hear about you too, because I think that gives me perspective. I don't want to be assuming anything during this whole
yeah, totally. So let me just tell you straight off the bat.
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is going to be how old are you?
Oh, I'm 24. Turning 24. Yeah.
Okay. I got quite a few years on you. I'm 32.
Yeah.
What I think this is going to be is somewhat of a misunderstanding. That's what I think is going to happen. I will see what happens.
Yeah.
But just to introduce myself to you, I know people who are watching this probably don't need this. Let's see, grew up in Southern California. I've been in politics for about a decade. About 2 years ago, I decided that there was too much seriousness going on in the political realm, and ideas that I liked weren't getting a foothold because they weren't snappy and cool enough. And so I kind of took the approach of, let's make this fun. And I know I think the video that you saw was not necessarily fun, but a lot of the content stuff that I do, I try to keep it lighthearted and kind of humorous, just because I think the less government involvement side, whatever you want to call it, is not great at that. So anyways, okay, that being said, I'm going to play this video. I got the reel right here. I just want to play that really quick, and then I would love to hear your thoughts.
Perfect.
Cool.
Got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. The first week or two that I was in class, my presence was questioned by white people.
I honestly don't know how we come down on different sides of this. Look, I know what that's like. I've been in rooms where stereotypically I don't fit in. I've been uncomfortable as the young brown guy with earrings sitting at a table where big decisions are being made. But the reason it's uncomfortable is because of affirmative action culture. Look, I earned my way into those rooms because I was good at what I did. And the last thing I want is people around me questioning my input because they don't know if I'm here because of my skill and ability or if I'm here to check some diversity box. I don't want to have to prove myself beyond the fact that I was already invited into the room. And if the barriers to enter the room are strictly and solely skills and ability, me just being there would be enough to instill confidence in me for everyone in the room. But when a culture of affirmative action exists, the skills of those who affirmative action was intended to help get constantly called into question, and our hard-earned skills and abilities are severely diminished. If you want racial minorities to succeed in a meritocracy, you have to eliminate racial quotas, or else people will continually question the skills and ability of those who may have been a diversity hire.
Okay, cool. I will open it up to you, and don't hold back. I'm a big boy; I can handle it. So yeah, let it rip. What are your thoughts? What did you disagree with? Is there anything in it that you do agree with? Go for it.
Oh no! I definitely agree with the sentiment, that experience, because I like a lot of other people can agree that we have experienced that sort of imposter syndrome, being in an environment that you feel like you're not supposed to be in, or whatever the case is. So
yeah,
but here's my thought process, right? As a black person, as a brown person, I say black. Usually when I'm going to diverse a bit here, but when I say black, I refer to myself as black. I'm sure everyone knows already. Oh, he's Nigerian. Why is he saying black? That's because as soon as I entered the country and like having this appearance, that's what everyone else saw me as. Exactly, right? That the whole description, the characterization was attached to me. So when I use it, I'm just using it just to make things easier. But as someone who's black and who have seen other black individuals in these very what's the term? The correct term I would use it like high places essentially. We've never essentially been accepted. Like even without. We've never been accepted in these spaces, right? Even in high school, there was no affirmative action there, but I was able to speak different from everyone else. I acted differently. I was excited to learn and everything else. And I got like side eyes and everything. So I don't think I was ever accepted to begin with. No one was ever accepted in these spaces to begin with, right? So that's how we got where we are today, essentially.
Are you talking about to start? Sorry, are you talking about to start? Because that's if that was your experience in high school, yeah, there's no affirmative action there. So I could see not fitting in. Also, though, just the quick caveat, you immigrated from another country, which usually makes you stick out a little bit.
I spoke this way the entire time. This is I learned how Nigeria was well at some point colonized by the Europeans or Britain to be specific, right? So we speak a lot of English, right? That's almost our primary language. So I was really like, people would see me like, when I tell them, oh, I'm from Nigeria, they're like, oh, you speak really good English. I'm like, yeah, there's no accent, whatever the case is. But then without me telling people that, because most people assume a Nigerian, oh, what's the first thing you think of? Oh, they're like the number one people in medicine, whatever the case is. So until I speak that thing and say I am Nigerian, people assume me to be black and to fit this stereotype, right? And in whatever space, especially spaces occupied majority by white people, I am always looked at differently, right? Unless I intimately don't know the person as a friend and we've discussed or like the level of relationship that we have, like I'm always looked as the other. Like I've had people question, it's like at no point has anyone really said, hey, you earned this. Like I always had to reassure myself and tell myself, you've earned this. And as someone who's like, let's say ancestrally speaking, not black, like originating from this country.
Let me interject with can I ask you a question? So you're delineating between I guess for lack of a better term, American black people and Africans. I'll tell you, all of we have Ugandan friends that we go to church with, like they moved here, like they're straight up Ugandan. And I've got a couple Nigerian friends as well, and all of them are wildly successful.
Yeah.
And so you brought that up, delineating between, I guess, American black and African black. Expand on that a little bit. Why would you?
Oh, you want me to expand on that? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So here's the part that I stated. I hope that you catch there is like they wouldn't know until I said I was this thing. Like they wouldn't notice or they wouldn't like appreciate me or my capabilities until I said I am Nigerian. And then there's already this complex, or the media is already sharing this aspect of Nigerian success. Like you said, they're widely, like when African immigrants come into this country of their own free will, they're widely successful to begin with. And people associate that. But you can't tell someone's African until someone tells, if they speak like me, or they have an Afro-American accent, for example, and they speak and you're like, oh, he's definitely black, until he says, no, I'm actually from this part of Nigeria or this part of Togo, whatever the case is. That's what I mean. The assumption, assuming the success, the potential of this person without knowing exactly what they can do, or without appreciating what they're showing you in their actions. And that's what I mean.
Okay, so what does all that have to do with the affirmative action case?
Oh, that's perfect, because that's I wanted to establish that aspect of this this whole thing, so you can
understand. And there's no disagreements here yet.
Oh
so
no. Yeah. So I needed to establish that, because a lot of people would say, but you have a different experience as an African, so you can't really speak on behalf of African Americans. So I had to make sure I established that to begin with before saying anything, right?
Sure.
So perfectly, I'm glad we were able to establish that. But you can go ahead if you have any questions or anything. I'm glad to expound on anything.
Okay, so yeah, so how does that play into this? I guess that particular video, and what was the issue with that?
Oh, perfect. My particular issue with that is you stating that, like in the caption, you said something like affirmative action affects the confidence of the student, or whatever the case is in this particular instance. And I'm like, yeah, but the thing is, from like when looking at Black folks in this country, from high school, from elementary school, you have teachers telling them you can't be successful, you can't do this. They go on.
Who's telling them that? I don't know who's and again, maybe those teachers exist. Those are bad teachers, probably in some bad like areas. I mean, maybe it's because I'm from Southern California, but I grew up in a very diverse community, and nobody ever said anything like that anywhere near me or anybody I know. Who is saying that to kids?
But are you Black though? So you can't discount. You can't. I'm just saying you can't discount an entire experience simply because you haven't experienced it yourself. Correct? Like, let's be honest, right? And
yes, but I just don't. It's not that I discount it. I'm questioning whether or not it happens, and when it does happen, if it does happen, who is it coming from? Like, are there white/Asian teachers telling Black kids they're not going to succeed, or is it Black teachers? Like, I don't know if this exists.
So there, honestly, there are barely any. Like, I went through my entire time at college having only, like, through JUCO all the way to a 4-year, only having one black teacher. So that speaks to a lot right there, because there isn't really that understanding of my struggle personally, right? But then again, I don't want to say, oh, my struggle is Black, but then I want to say that there's a larger proportion of Black people in this country who have difficulties like mine, and even worse. And the thing about affirmative action that a lot of people miss is it's not trying to delineate, you get special treatment in this instance because you're better than this person. It's not discriminatory in that way. And the thing is, if you look at the results in these universities that have actually adopted it, it's not like, they went from 6% acceptance to 10% acceptance. That's not the case. It just gives people the availability, knowing that this thing is possible. Because if I knew that was the thing, for example, right? I'd be like, I'd be able to, I'd want to rather put myself out there a lot more than I would have previously, right? Because I'm imagining from the perspective of someone who their entire life. So, okay, let me give you this example, right? Because you did ask a question and I realized I didn't answer the question. So in what form or how are people or teachers saying, oh, you can't make it in life, or you can't make it as a successful academic, whatever the case is? Let me give you a perfect example of something that happened to a friend of mine, essentially. It's usually the very subtle things. It's like, you submitted this paper. I need to see all the sources. This is missing something. And then going over the other person's things, like, there's some similarities here. Just snarky comments, like you're expecting the person to be dishonest from the start. It's like like we're intelligent to understand the underlying statements within that. Like,
I mean, I don't know, man. High school students in general, I don't trust any of them.
yeah,
Doesn't matter what color they are.
Oh no, that's perfect.
I assume all of them cheat, and if they're not cheating, they should be cheating.
I honestly, I'm not going to push for that because I graduated pretty recently. I don't want my school to ban me. But,
Okay, so here's what I'm like getting at, and here's where I think the misunderstanding is coming from.
Yeah.
How familiar are you with the actual Supreme Court case that got through, or that the Supreme Court knocked down, just regarding affirmative action? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you like 10 familiar with it, or 1 familiar with it?
Definitely not 10. I'd say
okay,
around 5.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here's I think what people get caught up on with the affirmative action thing in general. You talked about some struggles that you had growing up, and getting through all of that sounds very admirable. Like, honestly, I'm not being sarcastic. Like, that sounds like, tough dude, made it through some tough times, and seemed to have come out pretty well on the other side. Are you aware that the affirmative action case still allows for all of those things to be considered?
And I know. And that's one thing I failed to mention, right? Because I failed to describe my understanding of affirmative action. Because the thing is, it's not strictly based on your orientation, like socially speaking, right? It's based on your experiences as a result of that.
No, it's not. Here's where I think this is the misunderstanding. It's specifically based on skin color, which is crazy to me. That's why I think it's so crazy. If you had an experience like yours, you are allowed to say those things. You are like, people were talking, it was a college admissions thing. The college admissions were allowing people to use the color of their skin to advance or detract from their position in terms of getting into the university. You're moving here from Nigeria. You're raising your sister and having her go, you said went into the foster system, and living with your grandma and doing all of these things. All of that stuff is still allowed to be put into your college admissions. The only thing that they're saying, hey, you can't do anymore, is say, I have more pigment than the other person here, and therefore I should get a leg up. In my opinion, on a college admission standpoint, with your story, you already have a leg up. And I'm not saying like you have a privilege or anything. I'm just saying, like, if there's a person who is able to withstand grades in high school, or keep grades up in high school, and go through all of that, that person seems like a higher qualified applicant. And let me do the reverse of that. Bronny James, you're familiar with Bronny James? Does not need anything in his entire life. In terms of college admissions applications, when it comes to lifestyle and life events that have happened to him, he's not going to have the advantage. So the only thing that would differentiate him between somebody else is because he has darker skin. My question is, why would that matter at all? Does that make sense?
Oh, no, that makes sense, because I think you're also a bit confused on this matter. I'm glad you brought up the example of Bronny James, because he would get into any school he wanted to, just based off the fact that his parents have money, essentially.
Okay.
Right?
So replace him with another rich black kid, because those exist.
Money.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's an interesting thing, right? We have this conversation, and I don't want to diverge into what about these guys who get in simply because, their great grandfather got in, or what about these guys who got in?
I hate that too, by the way. I'm not legacy admissions are dumb, I think. They're just as dumb.
Yeah. So that I'm just going to avoid that altogether, right? And so let's focus on what you were talking about specifically. You're saying, if I took, like, let's say my own characteristic, my experience, all my attributes, and say you put it in a white person, for example, like that's what I'm assuming you're inferring, like
sure.
Why would the color of my skin essentially differentiate me, or differentiate the final decision of who to take into these universities? So what I'm going to say instead is, well, the thing is, it's not purely you're black and you come here because that's the case. Okay, so when I look at comparatively speaking, let's compare apples and oranges, because both characters, or both fictional characters I'll be creating, aren't living, obviously, and they're not the same. So in this case, say we have a white applicant with a 4.5 GPA, or I don't know how high it goes, but has the highest GPA.
Whatever. Yeah, the highest GPA.
Yeah, got you, from a middle class family, whatever. Because I don't want to say, oh, too rich, because then they can essentially just pay them their way through. That middle class family. Now, compared to, the thing is, people assume that the black applicant that is applying in this case probably has like, oh, a 3.5 GPA and is somehow competitive against a 4.5 or whatever the case is. That's not the case. That is not the case.
I understand that.
What I see is a 4.0, a 4.1 competing a 4.5, and then look at their experiences, and then look at how their experiences, or how much of their experience is a result of their racial identity, or any other identity that they hold, right? Because let's not assume, let's not just flat out assume that, oh no, it's not connected at all. It's separate. Like my struggle and someone else's struggle, especially when you're looking at it from a larger perspective, is completely separate from race, because that would be messed up, right? It's essentially saying, claiming rather that systemic or systematic racism, or both of them, never existed or don't exist today, right? So I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. Like,
you covered a lot there, and so let me ask you this question: a student with a, let's just say 4.5, who lives in an upper middle class gated community, all of that sort of stuff, and then a student that it has a 4.2, but was a single mom, and his mom is currently in jail. It's a he for this example. He's raising 2 of his kids' sisters. He's working 3 jobs, still managed to get a 4.2 and a perfect score on his SAT, but has a lower grade point average, and didn't do as many extracurricular activities as the kid in the upper class neighborhood. Who are you letting into that school?
4.2.
Okay. What if the 4.2 kid is white and the 4.5 kid is black?
4.2.
This is my point. Exactly.
That's the thing.
You don't take it into consideration. You're still allowed to take in life experiences into consideration. That's nobody is disallowing that sort of thing. Clarence Thomas, who wrote the one of the confirming opinions, is like, this is still all legal. But if you're judging it solely based on the look of somebody, that is actually racism.
No, not really. Okay, so I'm glad you talked on that aspect of affirmative action being like discriminatory, right? Because when we talk about racism, first thing that comes to mind is discrimination, segregation. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, like the discrimination against a certain group of people in this case,
mostly
right?
Asians. Yeah, it's just, interestingly enough, not white people really at all.
Why do you think it's not white people, and why do you think we're pitted against each other, like black, Asians in this instance?
Are you talking about like the greater 30,000-foot philosophical standpoint?
Oh, no. I just want you to be real with me. Like, I want you, like, if it's a conspiracy that you believe in, I want you to just spit it out.
Hold on, what conspiracy? I'm getting confused. The people that were hurt most by affirmative action were Asian students, not white kids. Asian and Indians.
To what degree?
I don't know. I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
Okay, cool. So I looked at some numbers. I'm not going to, because I generally just hate doing the numbers thing, because it is annoying, right? And I'm glad you also mentioned that, the people getting hurt the most are Asians and Indian people in this country. So then what comes to mind when I think about that is, well, aren't you guys as competitive against the white applicants as well? So why aren't they getting impacted in any way?
Well, what are you talking about?
Okay, so let me say this instead, right? So what if it is in fact the case that your spot is getting taken by unqualified white individuals, and that's why their level of enrollment is not being like affected?
You would be hard pressed to find that example.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
Is that so? Okay, let me say it. Let me say it this way, right? So in a basket, I like using analogies a lot. In a basket, you can fit 6 balls in the basket, sure, right? And let's say there are 3 colors. I'm not trying to Ignore every other ethnic group in the culture or whatever in the country or whatever the case is.
Mhm.
But in this case, let's think black. Red and pink, for example, right? Oh,
Sure.
so these are all the applicants that are going to be accepted by the basket. Holy hell! So now imagine one of the balls represents what's it called? Black people, black ball, and then two of the balls, because you guys you have a higher level of acceptance in these universities than black.
I'm not Asian, by the way.
Oh,
Just
no, no.
FYI. Yeah.
Shoot, I'm sorry. See?
No, you're good. I get it. I got some of the Asian eyes. I mean, technically Pacific Islander, but we're like deep South Pacific Islander. My dad was a Samoan immigrant, so yeah.
Hey,
That's so
sorry
technically
about
no.
that.
I'm not
Yeah.
included. Dude, I get it. So consider just.
Okay,
I just
gotcha.
wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that. But so two balls here for Asians. Let's say that's the pink ball, right? And then the rest of the balls, I think that's 3 for white people. That's the proportions don't really matter in this case right now. But so 3 of the balls there it represent the white population that's accepted by this university. So now imagine in an effort to correct historical.
I don't believe in that, but sure.
You don't. Oh, okay. You don't believe in that, so that kind of diminishes the whole conversation. But whatever the case is, in attempt to basically fix things that were broken that affected Black people in terms of their attendance of university and in terms of their success, in an attempt to do so, there's a very slight. I'm pressed to see any numbers saying that it jumped 1% even, but there's a very slight higher probability of these people making it into university, right? So you're telling me that the only proportions that change to accommodate this slightly higher number of Black applicants getting in is like the only place we can take that number or transfer that acceptance is from Asians. You're telling me that makes any sense?
No,
at all?
I'm not making that case at all.
Oh, no. But your statement was essentially that they're not affected at all. But why are Asian and Indians? You're all Asians, essentially. Not you, but they're all.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But why are they getting impacted so much by this change? What it tells me is, well, that spot is safe for the white people, right? You guys go fight over there over what spots you want to get on the team, right? That's what I don't know. That logically speaking, that's what it tells me, right? Essentially. So if you can't reach that logical conclusion, I can't really help.
Well, I think if you're conflating race with legacy admissions, I think you can maybe make that case. But like I said, I'm not a fan of legacy admissions regardless. In terms of just like overall meritocracy, like Asian culture and Indian culture puts a really heavy emphasis on academia. That's why that they're at the top in terms of getting into academic schools. Again, it has nothing to do with, again, people's skin color, though. Like in a meritocracy, you want the best people regardless of what they are. And I got a lot of heat for saying this on it doesn't matter, on another thing. But I was like, why is it that I'm being made out to be the bad guy for believing that all minorities can succeed in this country? I don't know. Like in my view of the world, I believe that just in the same way that Clarence Thomas believes that brown people, Hispanic people, Black people can all succeed in the same meritocracy. The problem is when you remove aspects of the meritocracy, you get people that are not necessarily qualified. And if those people happen to be Black and they wash out of the system, you have a bigger issue. You didn't solve anything. You just now have a bigger problem. I'm all about removing all of the barriers for competition at the very beginning, right? Like, well, let me rephrase that. There is nothing right now that any one person can do, legally speaking, in the United States based on the color of their skin.
They can or can't do.
They can't, and if there is something that they can do, I believe that should be eliminated.
Okay, so you're saying this is preventing people of a certain skin color to get in, essentially, because that's why I touched on discrimination a bit, because then we're gonna have a fun conversation about how it's racist, right? Because if it's not saying you can't go to this school, then like how is it discriminatory?
Hold on. Say you're losing me. Who is racist?
No, you defined the whole legislation as being racist, and I'm assuming by inferring that it is discriminatory against one group, specifically the Asian population, right? Is that my assumption? Like, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's not legislation; it's policy that was knocked down by the Supreme Court, mostly, yeah, for college admissions specifically. But the basic thing is you can't take into consideration the color of people's skin. You can take into consideration a whole litany of other things, but just by being a racial, like a skin color, the amount of pigment in your skin should not be a factor into whether or not you get into a school. That's the only thing it said.
Okay, let me. I'm going to turn, because we're going over the same point, and I already addressed that one. But let me let me turn to your meritocracy statement, right?
Sure.
What are the displays of merit, like in terms of like is successful, the perfect student, or go ahead.
In terms of merit, well, there's a lot of things to be taken into consideration, but I guess that's up for the school to decide. So I don't know, they can take into account grades, they can take into account family background, they can take into account SAT scores, extracurriculars, they can take in all of those things into account.
Okay, family background, like how far, like how does that dynamic play into this? Because I'm glad you mentioned family background specifically.
The family background that they experienced while growing up. You can't factor in 9 generations ago somebody was mistreated. That's
no.
Yeah.
The thing is, like you just stated that you don't particularly believe in like the existence of any consequences of racism back in the day, whatever the case is. Like
what does that mean?
So like systemic racism, right? So do you believe
what is that?
Do you believe in systemic or systematic? Do you believe in any form of racism that is not
the most prominent form of systemic racism just got knocked down by the Supreme Court. That's what I believe.
Oh, that's what you believe.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. I'm glad. I'm absolutely ecstatic that you said that. Right. So if that's
Sure.
the case, so what is your own base? Like, what's your definition of the racist aspect of this thing?
You're the one making the arguments. Why don't you tell me what is racist about
okay,
things?
No, because I want to understand your perspective. Because if you're saying, oh, it's racist because it's discriminatory, so then I want to understand what you think is discriminatory. Because from historical context, discriminatory is always you can't do this. And the thing is, there are no probabilities to that statement, right? It's not, oh, 50% of the time you can do this, or 80% of the time you can do this, or you maybe can't do this, or maybe you can't do this. No. Discrimination as it has existed in this country is you cannot do this, that's it, simply because of the color of your skin, right? In this case, we're talking about an issue where you're not telling anyone you can't do this, right? You're simply increasing, not really.
If a person was not admitted into a school because of their skin color / race to make way for someone else because of their skin color or race, yeah, that would be textbook racial discrimination.
I think that statement is absolutely it's like on the specific thing I said, it's incomparable, because when I stated or defined discrimination, it wasn't predicated on the things you've already done or the results. It's predicated on what you can't do in the present, right? It's like you can't step in there.
Which is what?
In this case, right? The thing is, it's not saying you can't apply to these schools. That would be freaking discrimination if that's what you're trying to get at. That would be discrimination. No, what instead it's saying, and I don't know, I don't understand why people assume that, oh, it's purely Black people getting like benefits from this, because that's how this conversation started and that's how it's going. So whatever the case is, because I believe, I'm pretty sure Asians also benefit from this system. Am I wrong?
I don't care who benefits. Let's not use racism to judge people whether or not they could get into schools. No. Look, you shouldn't have diversity hires. You shouldn't have diversity entrances into schools. It just hurts the credibility of minorities who can do the actual job.
So why would you care about the people who are judging your credibility when they've always judged your credibility?
What do you mean? Why?
That's why I started with this point, right? I don't want to be antagonistic towards white people. It's just not how I work. But in these spaces, primarily filled by white people. They're the majority in the student body, essentially. And they think that you're not meant to be there in the first place. Why should I value their perspective in saying that, right? Like, why should I say, oh, they think I'm not supposed to be here because of this? No, you're just ascribing certain things to your own experience. That's how I feel, right? From my own struggles, right? I think like I've gone against so many things and overcome so many things to now be stuck on some white person telling me I'm not supposed to be there, and then somehow accepting it for myself.
Who's telling you that?
No. Here's what I'm saying, right? You, even in the video that you played, right? You stated that you felt questioned, right? You felt that your validity, your reason for being there was questioned. Like how you got there was questioned. By what population was that the case? It had to be.
It was a bunch of old white guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's my point. So I'm saying if those
point? I don't know what the point is. Explain to me the point. That's what I'm confused about.
I said it, and I'm going to say it again. Right? They make up the majority of the school board. They tell you, oh, you're not supposed to be here. Like you said, old white guys. Those are probably your professors as well. No.
No. This is in the workforce. We were running a campaign where several millions of dollars was on the line, and so honestly, for me to go into those rooms as a boardroom, look, you got to understand the perspective of this. I was probably 27 years old, young 20-somethings dude with a t-shirt and jeans on into a boardroom with a bunch of like probably 50 plus white dudes in suits. To say that I stuck out like a sore thumb has nothing to do with race. It's just the world. Like that's just how that situation existed.
Come on. But that's the thing is,
I don't understand. What do you mean? Come on, what?
That's the thing though. I see, like, we walk into this room right here that we are right now, and it's still not hitting you quite, like it's not hitting you well, right? You're like,
have you ever heard of Killer King? You know, have you heard of Killer King Hospital?
No.
Okay, so let me just tell you, quickly lay out what Killer King is. Killer King was Martin Luther King / Drew Hospital, King Drew Hospital in Los Angeles. In like this, it was either the 60s or the 70s.
Yeah.
They had a huge emphasis on hiring racial minority quotas, mostly black people, but I think also Hispanics were mixed in there as well. The problem that they ran into, because their focus was on hiring minorities and filling quotas as opposed to hiring based on merit, they had a horrible reputation. And nobody could blame them for nobody could blame patients and people for not wanting to go to that hospital because the reputation was so bad. They killed a ton of innocent people on accident. They paid out, I think, the biggest fines in California history adjusted for inflation to medical malpractice lawsuits. It was a horribly run hospital because they focused on more diversity hires than they focused on actual medicine. Now, what I'm saying is not that minorities can't do those jobs. It is that minorities have to succeed in the same meritocracy that other people succeed in, and that everybody succeeds in. If you're going to base things on a merit system and people want the best from that system, you have to eliminate any sort of quotas that would thwart that system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm glad you brought up that example. But I'll take a step back real quick, and I'll address the point I was going to before we stepped into this example, right? You were talking about the space you entered and how it was dominated by white people and how it felt you uncomfortable because you stood out essentially, right? And I'm saying, right, because there was a time in this country, right, where we didn't have affirmative action, even in employment or schooling or anything, right? So can you explain, like, because then you would be forced to either say that, well, these minorities are incapable of filling those spaces, or you end up saying that, well, there's some systemic issues that, or systemic structures that ensured that, well, a much larger proportion of the exec board or whatever the case is ended up being a specific demographic. And you know what demographic I'm referring to. So let's have that conversation, because that's an interesting conversation to have here, because I want to understand your perspective, right? So there was a time when affirmative action was never really it wasn't considered, right? Because of, well, history, right? So what prevented these people, minorities, whatever the case is, from reaching the position that you reached and felt out of place, essentially? Like, what prevented them from reaching that spot?
I mean, that is a massive undertaking. Are you talking about actual legal discrimination? Because I'm not denying the fact that Jim Crow was terrible, and up until the 1965 Equal Protections Act, yeah, you had actual problems. But to say that righting past wrongs with current wrongs is going to fix anything is a pretty big logical fallacy.
The thing is, you're the only one. Well, in this conversation, you're the only one who thinks it's a wrong, right? I had this conversation with my friend.
Okay, so when does it stop? Let's just say hypothetically that, and this is part of Clarence Thomas's argument in this particular affirmative action case. Let's just say that the goal is to make it so that all Black kids have the same test scores. Let's just say the government intervened constantly until that happened. And then it doesn't happen. The only option then is for the government to double down on that. And then where do you go from there? Where does it actually end? And then if you're going to use it as that, like from that perspective, when does it flip? Because
this is fascinating. I don't want to interrupt you, but it's a fascinating question, right? It's the question I often hear from people where they're like, when we're talking about, oh shoot, we need to increase government spending in this aspect that helps citizens. They're like, well, it's going to cost too much money. When is or how is this going to affect the future in terms of government involvement in social life and all this? So I'm going to say this, right? It's going to be a similar question, right? When did the government involvement in just discrimination against minorities stop?
1965.
That's when it stopped. You know that definitively. That not like knowing, like, that's the thing. As an immigrant, I will give you this perspective, right? I lived in a country that everyone shits on. Essentially, they're like, oh, sorry for the cursing, but everyone like insults to, oh, it's a second world country. And then I think of the countries that actually brought me to where I am right now. And the thing is, those countries are actively still destroying my country. But being an American now, I can see the delusion in thinking, well, my government is good. They were racist at some point, but now they're no longer racist to us, but they're going to other countries and they're enacting certain governments.
Let's stick on the topic though. So
no, I'm trying to stick with it, but like, yeah. The fact that you're trusting the government I
don't trust the government to do anything.
Exactly.
I don't trust the government at
all.
all.
How do you believe that racism, like that system, stopped then? How do you believe that it definitively stopped then? Because people
if somebody is breaking the law, I want that person to be prosecuted.
Yeah,
it is the law that you have to. You cannot discriminate based on race, sex, sexual orientation, all of these things.
In law, you can't. In law, you're telling me in law, even today, you can't discriminate. Like the people who are enacting the law or enforcing the law, they cannot discriminate based on race or any of these other things.
Yeah, that is the law.
No. There's a difference between, oh, these people are definitely following the law and reality. Let's understand that, right? So you're telling me these people, like police, politicians, you're telling me they're not discriminating against people in their sectors or whatever regions that they're meant to, like,
you're getting to reality. Yeah. Okay. So I understand where you're going with that. The problem that you're going to have when you're making that argument is that you have so many variables in those in the argument as a whole. What I am saying is that legally speaking, you are not allowed to discriminate somebody based on their race, gender, sexual orientation, any of these things listed above. Now, if that is happening and it can be proven beyond the reasonable doubt, that is up for a jury to decide, and that person will be criminally prosecuted and hopefully found guilty. I am against that sort of thing as well.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's perfectly like I'm not saying that you're with the thing though. It's just, it's a very specific talking point that I see often is like when it comes to correcting a wrong, people start questioning how far before it goes too far, or how far before it actually damages the system, or how like this is like reverse racism or something, right? Or it's something.
Yes, reverse racism is not going to help. That's the
That's
problem is I'm trying to say is you have to eliminate the entirety of discrimination based on race, regardless of which direction. Was it fair in this country? No, and I'm not saying that it was, but
it still isn't.
fortunately, we live in a place that has the pursuit of a better country as a whole. You're never going to get to a perfect ideal. It's not realistic.
No, but you can aim for it at least. No.
Yeah, and you aim for it by eliminating discriminatory practices, regardless of which direction they point.
I'm glad, like, you keep saying discriminatory because it's a very specific wordage. People assume that with being bad to begin with, and I honestly don't even agree with that the normal definition of discrimination in this context. I tried explaining it, saying that this is not particularly discriminatory against anyone. It's not saying you can't do it. It's saying you have a chance of doing it. No, it's saying you have literally. Here's the thing. Here's the thing though. Like, the odds of Black people getting in does not detract from the odds of another person getting in. Would you agree with that statement?
By the numbers, by math, that does not make sense.
Tell me the numbers, right? Tell me the numbers.
If there are 1,000 people that are going to be accepted into a school, and one person, doesn't matter if they're Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, gets in based on their race, that doesn't mean that 1,001 people get accepted. No, it means another person loses their spot.
So that statement, I guess I said it wrong, but let me put it.
That's fine.
Let me put it this way, right? So if we have probabilities, for example, of getting into a certain institution, and for example, they have quotas to meet, whatever the case is. Does the what's it called? Does affirmative action define the quotas? And like, I want to understand to what extent that quota has shifted, because that's going to be important when I look at California, especially Stanford, and compare it to Harvard, who they've been using affirmative action for a bit now to accept students, whatever the case is. Let's compare the proportions of people or of students being accepted in the demographics of the racial demographics. You see that they're pretty freaking similar.
Well, the problem is I don't care about demographics.
Oh, you don't care about demographics? Then why is this whole? Okay, so what's the whole argument about numbers then? Why do we care how many of this?
Come on, you're talking about two very different things. I don't care if the percentage of the population is reflected in the percentage of people that work a specific job or in a specific field. I don't care about any of that sort of stuff. When we're talking about numbers, I'm talking about actual admission rates. If there's only a select amount of people that are allowed to get in, and one person gets in order to fill either a quota or to increase the proportions, then that means one other person has to be kicked out. That's the numbers I'm talking about. Proportions don't mean anything to me. I don't care.
I'm glad you said that then. So in that case, like, what are the options? I might shift gears a bit. What are the options that let's say the Asians have let's say a large majority of Asians that are successful in that way, like Nigerians, right? Most Nigerians that come into this country and are extremely successful come from wealthy families. That's the only way you can make it into this country legally to begin with. You come from wealthy family, they fund you all the way up. They either donate into the school or you just work your way all the way up, right? But you have a stable base to begin with, right? So you're not making it into Harvard. Well, there's Stanford, there's Princeton. You have other options, but you have individuals who I personally think are just as qualified, but are less competitive primarily because of, experiences that they've had due to their racial identity.
Okay, that's where you get lost. Experiences they had is fine, but due to their racial identity, no, you don't get to say that.
No. That's the thing. This talk cannot proceed if you don't accept that such a thing exists in this country. You can't tell me
such a thing is what? What are you trying to say that such a thing exists?
Okay, so to be successful in education, whatever the case is, do you believe that you need two parents? Do you believe that you need a parent? Do you think that you like
I don't believe that you need anything. Now, stats would show you that it's substantially beneficial to come from a two-parent household. Yes.
Yeah, so you do need it.
I didn't say that. I said
it's
helpful.
You said that. What do you mean it's helpful though? Because here's the thing:
statistically speaking, it's very, very advantageous for people to come from a two-parent household.
So I would say, realistically speaking, not everyone has that. But if you're going to be successful, or you want your kids to be successful, you have to maintain a household where you're present and your partner's present. That's, you said it's supported by statistics as well, right? So if we're looking at racial aspects of this country specifically, right, let's talk about Black people, right, and how men have actively been removed from the family, for example, right? Let's also talk about this aspect of racism and how it's affected them. For example, I explained my difficulties in applying, just application alone, applying to universities, right? You might say, oh, but you had resources at school, whatever the case is. But if you don't have a parent, a guardian, or someone that you know who's actually been there or has some sort of knowledge of it, that detracts from your experience completely, right? Do you agree?
What does that have to do with being Black? It's just a
perfect.
skin color thing.
I'm
It has
glad.
nothing to do with the amount of pigment in somebody's skin. You can use all of those things. I had nobody to talk to. I had to raise myself. I had to work 3 jobs. You can use all of those things. The only thing the affirmative action thing struck down was being able to say, I am Black, please let me in. Or I am Mexican, please let me in. Or I am El Salvadorian, please let me in. That's the only thing it removed.
The thing I'm trying to establish that you're not quite hitting on is the relevance of race, right? So racism exists. Why race? Why what characteristic did that thing capitalize on, or like basically like what characteristics, right? Did, like, I'm trying to understand your perspective, because I think you're removing the Black from the experience, because that's completely wrong. Like, am I correct in saying that?
I don't know what you're saying.
Okay,
removing the Black from the experience.
Yeah, you're removing the racial identity of the person.
There are more poor white people than poor Black people in this country.
Of course, because proportionally speaking, there are more poor white people than poor. Okay, but let me say this then. I'm gonna say something a bit mean that may piss off your white audience, but things have been handed off to white people a lot more shit. Everything was handed off to white people at the beginning of this whole revolution, right? This whole industrial revolution. You could buy a house for cheap. You could get education for cheap. You can do all these things. And what group of people were restricted from getting those things?
Okay, I'm not going to defend slavery.
I'm not saying defend. I'm saying that you have to understand that there are aspects of that.
Yes, I have said that. I agree with that. And what I'm saying is that if you eliminate all of the ability for the government to interact with people based on the pigment in their skin, you're going to get a better outcome in the long term. If you look at people by the color of their skin and say, well, you were historically discriminated against, we are going to help you out, then at some point the tables will have to flip until the government has helped that person out so much so, or that community out so much so, that now they're the oppressor and the other people that are now the oppressed. And then it flips. That's the whole thing. Is you have to get involvement out of this whole thing, or else you're going to have a system that just breaks down because it flips back and forth too often and too arbitrarily.
You see, the one thing that I'm happy about is, like, the reason I'm having this conversation is not to like convince you of anything. It's hopefully, I don't know, if like once you post this, I can get understanding from other people when they share their perspective. But I established something very specific at the very beginning of this video, right? I established the qualifications of these Black students that are applying to these schools, right? So are you telling me that, oh, they're not qualified to begin with, right? And so we're letting in more, like, are you assuming that like affirmative action basically takes someone who has a 3.5, 3.2 GPA and stuffs them in there simply because they're Black? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the Supreme Court said that you are not allowed to take that into consideration.
No. But I want to, like, then again, I still want to hit on that point, because it's a yes or no. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that unqualified Black people are ending up in these positions because it's purely based on their skin color? So someone with the 3.0 is getting in instead of someone with the 4.0, essentially.
Okay, let me ask you this. If that wasn't happening, would there be any need to strike down affirmative action based on skin color?
What do you mean?
I'm saying if that wasn't happening. You're trying to get me to say that that's not happening, right?
Oh, perfect. No, because that's the thing. That's the interesting thing that I'm trying to hark on here, because I can't prove that something is not happening, but you're claiming that this thing is happening, right? You can't leave the burden on me to prove that this thing is not happening because evidence. No, you're saying it's happening. I want to see you establish those.
No, I'm not telling you to prove a negative. I'm telling you that if it were not happening, why would anyone care? You know what I'm saying? Like if it weren't actually happening in practice, there would have been no court, there would have been no case in front of the Supreme Court. In other words, yes, it is happening, and the evidence to show that it's happening is the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest and most powerful court in the world, had to take it up.
No, it's hilarious. You bring that state. You said that thing specifically. And did you know about the most recent case about the woman who said, a gay couple came up to me and wanted a website, and turned out the gay couple never existed. She was never a website designer, whatever the case is. But the Supreme Court decided on that thing and said that she's able to discriminate based on the sexual orientation on a completely fictional story, right?
So okay, but here's the thing. Hold on, get back to the thing. If you're going to argue that it's not happening, then why are you arguing that it should be allowed?
What do you mean?
You're saying that minority students, or let's just say black students, are not getting into schools unqualified, but you're also simultaneously saying that that should be allowed.
I never.
How does that make sense?
When did I say that? My whole argument this entire time was these people are qualified, and even more so when you consider the aspects of their whole experience as it relates to their race. But you're saying that I'm stating that the less qualified. I'm saying the whole time that these people are qualified because of their life experiences, the things that they overcome, because of their race as well. No, because
the only thing we disagree on is when you say because of their race.
Yeah.
That is the only thing. Because somebody looks a certain way has nothing to do with whether or not they should get into a school. If their life experience was extraordinarily difficult, then yeah, that person should be looked at more cautiously and carefully by the administration. Whether or not that person is white, black, brown, I don't know, any of the colors, who cares?
Okay, let me put it this way, right? I'm gonna say this over and over again. I keep falling into the loop of, I'm trying to convince him. No, I'm not trying to convince you, but hopefully this expands your understanding, or hopefully you learn something, whatever the case is. But let me put it this way. Straight up, you don't believe in the existence of systemic racism or systematic racism. Like that's like you already said that, it's undisputed, right? At this
I did not say that, but okay.
Oh no, come on, you can't move back now because you
can't put definites on some. Look, I understand rhetorical tricks. You can't put definites on somebody and sit here and then argue against a point that I never made. If you're going to argue against a straw man, go do it somewhere else. I never said that racism doesn't exist. That's what you're saying. No, what I said is that government has made racism illegal, and if it does exist in certain institutions and practices, those people should be punished under the law.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I need you to state, like, I know absolutes don't exist, right? Right. But in this context, it absolutely does. Because even if it's a tiny drop of something, it still exists. It's like, it's only systemic racism in Oklahoma or something like that. It still exists, right? So you can't.
Okay, so give me an example then. Give me an example of something that you can't do that I can do, or you can't do that a white person can do.
Oh, well, quick example. I went to the store. This was pretty recent. I went to the store with my girlfriend. We went to pick, I hope she sees this, but we went to pick up some drinks, and we were walking out to the self-checkout line, right? And then a lady came up to me and she's like, oh, no, I can help you over here. While everyone else is waiting in line, obviously not black people. Everyone else is waiting in line to get in line to pay for the thing, right? She pulls us aside and says, oh, I can help you here. Like right in the middle of the line, bro. Like,
what were you getting?
Oh, I was getting soda and some cake. I don't know, was it like a carrot cake, whatever the case is? It wasn't alcohol. It's nothing like that. I was getting soda and carrot cake, and then it flipped, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like it's insane because people who haven't experienced this before will say, "Oh no, it's probably she just wanted to be helpful." I'm like, "Well, there's 5 other people in line. I'm in the middle of the line." She didn't go up to the first person, to the last person. She came to the middle and pulled me and my girlfriend apart.
Okay.
So, like, is that racially? Is that right? Come on now. Come on.
Okay. Right? So, but look at it through a different perspective. What if she was like, black people have been historically disenfranchised, and I want to help this black couple, and I'm going to give them a leg up by offering them something nice.
Oh my God.
You have no idea.
No, I have absolutely. bro. Okay, so a disconnected case. Like this is not the same instance, but give
Okay.
me the same feeling, right? So have you ever just been followed around in a store, in any store that you've gone to? Like at least like I want to say like 60 to 70% of the stores you've gone through, you have like security following you around. I worked for a Ross, right? I worked for a Ross for many years. Not many years, like 2 years. I worked for a Ross for like 2 years. I understand the system and everything, how it works, right? And I promise you, systematically, if you look black, you're getting followed. One. Number two, I went to a Ross to shop because, well, I got benefits and I was trying to take advantage of it. Sure. I went to a Ross to shop, and I wasn't looking disheveled or anything. Like I simply was black, dressed like comfortable. There was someone following me behind. And usually the tactic is, hide behind and then peek and then make sure, and then there's cameras and stuff. Like literally. So the next level up would be, say this person, maybe I didn't notice her following me around to begin with, but then I go to check out with the stuff, right? And this person who's been following me around comes up to me and is like, I can help you over here after following me around the entire time. You can't tell me, this. Come on.
So here's what I would say, and I'm gonna have to wrap it up here in a little bit, but
it's fine.
The idea that somebody looks for that sort of thing, and I don't know that you're that type of person, and I don't know you very well, but if you look for that type of stuff, you will find it, regardless of whether or not it's happening. You will find it. Now, to get back to the point that I was making, if someone were to take action against you because of your race and were to say, well, you can't buy that here, or you need to leave because you're black, that's illegal. That person should be prosecuted. I agree with you 100%. But you're giving me a lot of anecdotes that are very difficult to prove and could be that somebody is looking for something bad to happen. I guess I've been followed around stores, but I also dress like a hoodlum sometimes. I wear like big old baggy clothes and don't look the best a lot. And so there's a part of me that goes, yeah, I could see how they think I would steal something. I don't have a problem with that because I understand what I'm presenting. If I'm in a suit, that's never happened. I don't know what to tell you on the anecdote stuff. That's just that can't be the basis of the argument.
No, that's interesting because when a Black American or whatever the case is brings up the thing is go off topic for a second here, right? The thing is when I go to see like an African American movie or whatever the case is, the racism is always so upfront. It's like, hang that guy or do this or do that, right? It's always in your face, and I always questioned it because I'm like, real life is not so like, especially today, it's not so abrupt. Like I'm like, there's the subtle stuff that people don't see. But then when I see it in like the subtle stuff in movies, and I'm like, I know what that is. The white person next to me does not see it because they've never experienced it. They don't have the context to apply to it, like the experiential context to apply. Of course, you're gonna say it's anecdotal, whatever the case is. It's fine. It's fine. You can say, yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, I'm talking legally. Like that's the only thing I care about is legally.
Legally, right? Like. It's fascinating when the legal aspect of these whole issues come up, right? The thing is, the legal system has also like over generations. It's changed and changed and changed. At some point, it legalized the hunting of indigenous people in this country, right? It paid people off to do it, right? So when people say legally, I'm like, well, we have to look at a lot of context to understand the legal implications of this decision or this thing, right? And that was the whole topic of the conversation in the Supreme Court. Right, we're trying to get into the weeds and understand the social aspect of this thing, not it's illegal. It's illegal. You can't do that because it's illegal. No, well, let's have a conversation, right? The government doesn't have a good track record of establishing. Okay, let's talk about crack cocaine in this country, for example. Right? I don't know if you're gonna get
no, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that, for example, right? How it was crack cocaine specifically was over policed in Black communities, while like rich.
Was it over present in Black communities?
It was over. So you're gonna tell me that Black communities smoke more cocaine than white?
No, I'm asking you a question. I don't. No. You know what I do know about cocaine and heroin, which is kind of fascinating. And actually, maybe this plays into a factor. the heroin epidemic in the 70s killed like 7,000 people, 5,000 people. The crack epidemic at its height, the most deadliest year was like 8,000 people. Opioids in 2020 killed like 100,000 people, and like nobody talks about it.
So
I don't know if that plays into a factor at all. I just thought it was interesting that you brought.
Are you serious?
From a governmental standpoint, dude, I follow the news a lot, and there are not a lot of politicians moving heaven and earth to stop the opioid epidemic. There was in the 80s to stop the crack epidemic, but not nearly the amount of political will and force to like stop the opioid epidemic.
Literally in the Bay over here, there are governors and officials saying, "Oh, let's open up spots for people to safely inject them or take it."
Yeah, it's a horrible idea.
I know it's a horrible idea, but you can't. Say, "Oh no, no one's uptaking." No, they are.
I'm saying relative to the 80s, like again, this is way off topic, but like relative to the 80s, it's fascinating to me that nobody cares about opioids. I care a lot about the opioid epidemic, and
I was going to say, what was the result of people caring about crack cocaine specifically? Because this was mainly used by the Black community, right?
There was the big war on drugs. There was also the probably. Wow, see, that gets really interesting in terms of like your philosophy over what the government should do. I tend to say that the government should be out of most things, but I'm having my mind changed a little bit from how bad the lack of a legal system has been in the past couple of years. But it also led to going down and knocking out Pablo Escobar, which is the thing. Is like, did taxpayers need to pay for that sort of thing? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, again, this is kind of murky territory. I'm not sure where we're going with this.
Oh, no. That's perfectly fine. But like, my point, of course, you're going to dispute this, is while the fight on drugs during that time, the war on drugs, was more policing, more jail time, all of these. What are the ongoing efforts against opioid? You can't simply say, there's no efforts against opioid, because I walk out every day and I see a banner, right, saying, stop doing this. Here's a helpline. But in the Black communities, what were the helping things that the government instituted, or the local government, I guess?
I don't know. I don't know enough to speak on this.
Exactly.
Like I don't know.
Exactly. Well,
that doesn't prove.
No.
I don't know.
No, because I wanted you to say at least one positive thing that they tried doing, like help these people with what's it called? Medical aid or whatever the case is. Like, these people are going through a mental breakdown, or let's get them some help. No, these people were getting arrested, locked up. They would get let out, and then they'll go back to the same habit, and then they'll get
okay. I'm actually really curious before and sorry to like deviate from this, but I before I have to go.
Yeah.
I want to know your perspective on, and this again is kind of out of the loop here. One of the reasons that I think if Black students are suffering on a grade level and have bad grades or this, that, or the other thing, you can look at families, you can look at the wedlock birth rates, and they're not good. But one of the things that I think is so interesting is the fact that, and I hate to bring parties into this because I'm not a big fan of political parties, because I don't feel represented by either one of them.
Yeah.
Although to be out and open there, I do generally side with Republicans on most things. But because with Black students having bad grades, not as good outcomes in terms of lower level schools, which is just true. And I think you would probably, you'd agree with that sort of thing. One of the proposed fixes to those is school choice, where students can go to the school of their choice with a voucher from the government rather than government-funded schools. Yet, for some reason, the Democratic Party and mostly the teachers' unions are huge proponents of eliminating school choice. In other words, keeping urban kids in failing government schools, right? You can talk about all of family dynamics and this and that and the other thing, but at the very, very least, if you're going to say that black kids are at a disadvantage because of the bad schools, I can agree with that. Why then is nobody willing to attempt to fix it? Instead, they just throw money at stuff that ends up getting wasted, and kids in urban schools, whether they're Hispanic, black, white, whatever, get stuck in failing schools. Do you have a thought of that sort of thing? Because
yeah,
everything seems to be kind of party lines here right now, but I'm attempting to go like, at the very least, is there something that we can have common ground on in terms of, I want to help inner city school kids.
Yep,
I would love to do that. And I think the best way to do that is eliminate the advocacy groups that only advocate for teachers getting more money and union bosses making more money.
Yeah.
But that is a roadblock that has been held up constantly and endlessly by politicians that are Democrats. I don't want to say the Democratic Party, but politicians that are registered Democrats.
Yep.
Any thoughts there? Because if you fix schools, I think you have a much more likely chance of any kid in a bad situation getting into a higher education based on their merit.
I'm glad you said that, because then that leads me to one point. Well, affirmative action to a degree is giving people access to more opportunities, more schools, right? I know we always hark on, it's the black people are getting the most benefit. No, it's mainly white women. Everyone knows that. But let's focus on that for a second, and then I'll go into the actual topic that you just asked about, right? So the opportunity that's granted these people in these very, obscure locations, right? The thing is, affirmative action, I know it's always, it's simply skin color.
What do you mean obscure locations?
Well, I'm saying like very isolated locations in the country, for example, where you wouldn't know anyone. There's like obviously there's one valedictorian, but like there's one really good student in that school simply because, they're not getting enough, or they're not surrounded by a community that makes enough to fund a good school system, right? I'm saying like in those instances, affirmative action gives people the opportunity to punch up, essentially, right? Because hold on.
But that's just not true. You can't just say that and be like, this is what happens. No, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't allow somebody, like, it is whether or not colleges can consider race. If they grew up in a podunk town that didn't have any resources, and that kid applied to a school, and then the school took the podunk town into consideration, that has nothing to do with what the Supreme Court's decided.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because then that also touches on race again, and how like over generations, like black folks specifically have been red zoned. Like they've been put in these specific living conditions where, for one, like I honestly agree with the fact that let's make high schools available for everyone. So what are we going to do about accessibility? How are they going to get to the schools, right? How are they going to afford these more expensive schools that require a lot more resources, right? Okay, so I'll give you my example. In high school, I went to this school right next door, like 3 blocks away, Foothill High School. I went there for a semester, a year. And then a teacher there was like, yo, like you're, I don't want to like do anything, but they're like, oh yeah, you can do well if you go to this school instead. Or if you did this instead, or you attended this program, like IB program, because I did IB too. So yeah, I IB program at this school, just go. It's like it's in a completely different school. What's it called? District, exactly. Yeah. So it's extremely difficult to breach that barrier. Right?
Yes.
Move. Yeah, and that's the point you're making. You're saying, it should be more accessible. Well, let's have that conversation, right? As general, okay, let me establish this. We understand that a lot more black people are in that far lower income, right? They make a lot less money than, like, say, white people, for example.
Yeah, but
right?
you can't. Okay.
No. So,
sure, but you can't use that because
no, hold on. Like,
white people are like 8th on the list of races in terms of income.
No, it's
so
fine.
Like, I get it. Yes, you're right, but let's not say that that's because of XYZ, because there's a lot of variables in there.
There's a lot of variabilities, but then at the end of the day, if you look at the root cause and the fact that black people have repeatedly tried to be successful and they've been murdered, killed, their investments destroyed. Let's not even, I don't want to delve into that, because you're either going to refute the effects years after that. I don't want to delve into that. So let's say, like, from my perspective, from my own experience, right? I was broke as hell. I didn't have any money, right? So now this person was telling me, oh yeah, you look brilliant, or you sound brilliant, whatever the case is. I want you to go to this school, and you will be successful in the future. So my grandma, being a great advocate, was able to get me to go to that school, right? So now let me give you an idea of my own schedule, right? Because you would assume, oh, he's going to a better school. This is Miraloma High School specifically. He's going to a better school. He's going to do so much better, right? He's going to be so much more successful. I think I'm very successful, but I think I could be a lot more successful if I had some other resources, but I digress, right? So
Me too.
yeah, exactly, right?
Everybody, yeah.
Everybody, right? So it's like, oh yeah, you have this opportunity, take advantage of it, and just do what you can with it. So this is my schedule in the day, right? So I wake up at 5:30 in the morning, get ready. I have to catch the bus at like 6:30 because, well, we didn't have a car essentially because we were broke as hell. I didn't have a car, and until my grandma got a car, she used it to work, and so she couldn't really help me with anything. But I digress again. 6:30, got to school at 7:30 because I think that's when school started. I got to school at 7:30 on the dot. Did everything I needed to at school. Say we finished at 2:30, right? I did extracurriculars. So if it's sports, if it's part of a band or whatever the case is, I did those things because, well, it improves your application process and everything else, your acceptability. I did those things, particularly sports, because I enjoy doing sports. By the time I was done, I want to say it's like 6 with athletics and everything. It's 6. I walk over to the bus station. I have to wait until 8 to get on the bus, right? Primary reason why I couldn't get on the school bus was because, well, not in my district, all of that,
no,
right? Yeah. So I got on public transport at 8. Took me, I want to say, an hour to get home at that point because stops, get home. At 9, I do all my chores, do everything. By the time I'm ready to do homework or anything else, it's 10. Now, imagine that perspective, that experience, right? In a large sum of Black youths. And now let's say someone who's doing a lot better than that. Parents can drive you up. Oh, you're done, you're ready by 7, drives you up, brings you back exactly after your practice is done. You have time to go tutor. You have time to do all these things. Mind you, I didn't get a tutor for what's it called? My SAT or SAT test. I didn't get any resources in that regard. I could have reached out, but yeah.
You know what I'm gonna say, right? You have to know
You're
what I'm
gonna
gonna
say,
say.
you're gonna say, oh, it's just your experience, but I'm saying,
No, you can use all of those things. I think that makes you a qualified individual. And honestly, from a hiring perspective, that would do a lot. And none of it has to do with the color of your skin.
No. The thing is, it doesn't for me because I'm Nigerian. I came here of my own. That's the only thing it boils down to every single time. And if you're missing the essential aspect of my argument, right? You're not going to agree with me. We're not going to go anywhere, right? My argument is the reason why these people are in the situation, or these kids are in the situation I was then, like, predominantly in the situation I was then, and even worse, right? People are experiencing a lot of trauma and all these additional things. The reason why they're experiencing these things is because of pre-existing racial discrimination in this country against their ancestors, causing them to fail. So let me say this final thing before I stop, right? The reason why I went through those struggles was primarily because, well, I didn't have any parent figure. I didn't have any support system. No one was really working to provide like that, right? So now when you look at that from that perspective, you realize that, holy freaking shit, if you look at the proportions of African American kids whose dads were removed because of over policing of their neighborhoods. Of course, you might not agree, you might agree, right? And so all of these cascading effects influencing these people, resulting in kids having to work, essentially. Like, who wants to get a freaking student loan debt when they're struggling already to feed their family or do this or do that? Who cares about going to Harvard? But there's a tiny number of people in that group that are like, fuck this shit. I will break the generational curse. I will make it. I will sacrifice my time. I will possibly sacrifice my familial relationships because, well, you're not providing for them anymore, and pursue this thing for myself, right? And those people need to get the opportunity to do so, right? And you're saying, oh, but at the end of the day, if you just look at the experience alone, well, let's look at the context of that.
A lot of people, like, again, none of what you said I disagree with.
Yeah,
except for because Black people specifically.
exactly.
Like
That's the thing. I'm trying to establish again and again and again. The reason why they're experiencing these things is because, well, the racial system in this country has removed.
Can I ask you, how did
Yeah.
you make it out then? How did you, because again, you seem like a well-adjusted person with a good head on their shoulders
Yeah.
who probably will do pretty well in life.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was extremely lucky.
No,
I had
dude.
Oh,
no,
no.
you take a compliment.
No.
You sound like a hardworking person. You
No.
can acknowledge, hey, I'm a hardworking person.
I
And two,
appreciate it.
the beginning of all of this, that reel there, at no point did I say that Joy Reid was a dumb person. She is a go-getter type individual. I disagree with her a lot, but she's a go-getter. Give yourself some credit. You weren't just lucky.
I'll take some credit. I'll take some creddet. And
you know that you weren't just lucky.
Oh no, but like I think a large majority of it is me being lucky, right? So in college,
dude.
Bro, in college there were multiple instances where I had to decide between going to school or flunking out essentially, or being homeless, right? There are people met with those decisions, and I feel like I personally feel like if you're a child with no support system, right? First off, you shouldn't have to go through those hardships. But if you're like, there's so many homeless students, and I can't stress this enough. But I was lucky enough to be part of the track team at San Jose State, and they gave me housing during COVID, right? So like when I sit down and I think about it, I'm like, I've been so freaking lucky to meet these specific people who guided me. I didn't have my parents with me, but I met my coach in high school because I did athletics, right? And he guided me through. Not like handouts, like, oh, go to college here, do this, do that. No.
Do you think any of those people would have helped you if you weren't a go-getter? The answer is no.
No. Yeah, no.
They don't. If people, like, again, I'm just looking at the trajectories of people and how they operate. Like, if you are a go-getter type personality, and if you are one who is willing to sacrifice and work hard and all of these other things, the people that you meet that you call lucky are going to appear. That's just how the world works. There's no statistical proof of this. There's no anything of that. Sorry, I got to smash this spider.
Oh no, sorry, it's all good. But no, I don't think so. I think it's first off, your neighborhood. Like when people talk about networking, for example, it's like the place you are is what situates you in a spot of opportunity, right? So I'm here right now. Right.
But nobody says you have to stay in that spot. That's the thing.
The thing you're not understanding. There's so many reasons, that justifiable reasons why these people have to stay there. For one, they have to provide for their families. One big one, they have, like I said, have to provide for their families. Number two, what do they have out there? Right? They don't have any savings to just say, oh, I'm gonna up and leave and go to this state and be successful. It's not possible. I didn't make that. The day or the weeks leading to me transferring to San Jose State University, I was working overnight shifts at Amazon. Almost crashed my car when I was going to my orientation. That's because I had to go there right after a shift and then come back home to another shift at like 6:30. So like the thing is, you can't. It's very painful when people expect everyone to work just as hard. Essentially working twice as hard as middle income kids, essentially, right? 3 times as hard to get to a spot where someone worked a fraction as hard as you did, right? That's not only considering education, but other factors, right? So if we understand that, and we understand, of course, you're not going to be agreeing with me on this one, that aspects of that experience is tied to generational trauma, generational effects of race. Come on, I already talked about how my issues were my struggles were primarily because I didn't have any guidance in the family. I already said that.
But you figured it out. Do you want a job? Dude, I guarantee you, if there's a business person watching this, they're gonna be like, oh, I want to hire that guy. I don't agree with him on things, but like, dude, you have to allow for like things and decisions that people make in their life to affect their trajectory. More like, well, this is a sticky issue, but Japanese people in California got all of their stuff taken away during internment camps. Like just got removed from their houses, thrown in internment camps. Asian Americans who, again, are at the top of the food chain right now from a financial standpoint, weren't legally allowed to own property in the state of California until the early 50s. Like, so why then? The question is, why are those demographics able to succeed where others can't, especially when you're talking about generational stuff? Like, Asians got dumped on hard.
Let's go. No, it's fine. It's perfect. Oh my God, you just started it. Okay, let's talk about reparations then. Did they receive reparations for those?
Yes, Asian Americans received a small amount of reparations for a very specific thing. If you're going to try and say
you brought up
black people, it is so, okay. So let me tell you this: if there is a provable case in which the government did something that they shouldn't have done against a family because of their race, I am for the government repaying that debt. For example, in California, I don't remember the specific story, but there was a beach property that was owned by a black family, and the state commandeered it and took it away and claimed public domain that we're going to do this. And the black family ended up losing their housing, right? Or losing this property, which was in a prime location. If that sort of detail can be proved, I am all about the state making it right. Now, when you're talking about blanket reparations, it's just not workable, regardless of whether or not you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's not even in the conversation. It's just not doable.
Oh no, that's the thing. That's the thing everyone says. But when we ask for some tiny bit of it, right? Like we're not even asking for billions, but an opportunity to attend this school or whatever the case is, it's always questioned. But let me say this, right? You're saying, oh, they got paid a small sum of money. $20K back in the day was a lot of money, right?
But they lost everything.
Yeah,
like, everything.
Yeah, exactly. And
businesses, and that is way more recent than slavery. And I'm not saying either one is good. I'm not trying to defend either one of those. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at it from a workability standpoint, you're going to have people who never owned slaves paying money to people who never were slaves.
There's an aspect of it that you also miss, that the people who owned slaves also got paid and not the slaves themselves, right? So if we're talking about reparations, everyone's always against reparations, and especially in this case, right? But that's the thing, like
but you wouldn't get reparations, right?
Huh?
You wouldn't get reparations, though.
I wouldn't. I don't have any ancestors that have been in here and experienced racism, right? But that's the thing, right? There's a long line of what's it called? Effects that have existed, that have followed generations and generations and generations of people who, like black people, who've been in this country. You might agree, you might not agree, but at the end of the day, what I will say is, why is everyone always pushing back when no one's even calling reparations? But I see it that way. When people talk about traditional reparations, oh, let's get this monetary value of what was lost during that time, what was just destroyed, what was kept from these people. Like it's unrealistic. No one's going to be able to calculate it exactly. Obviously, there's some videos out there, people trying to, but like,
did you see what the San Francisco Board of Supervisors of the Reparations Advisory Committee recommended?
What they recommend?
It's comical. It's like $5 million to each person. It would bankrupt the entire state. Now here's what I'm actually saying about this, and you probably could agree with this.
Yeah.
The whole push for reparations by politicians is the most cynical thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just not possible to get done. And because they know it's not possible to get done, they say these big, dumb numbers that will never actually happen in order to curry favor for votes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why the reasonable thing in this case is, so we had a long period of time, like you're talking about, oh, if we can prove the government doing this thing to these groups of people, then we require them to correct their wrongs, essentially, or have them arrested. Well, those people
do the best they can.
Do the best. Well, this is the best you can, right? You're not going to say, no, hold on. You're not going to cripple a whole generation of people, a whole demographic of people, absolutely cripple them, and then expect them to succeed in the same environment as everyone else who's essentially had handouts.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think is the actual disconnect. I think there is a difference in value placed on personal decisions. I think personal decisions, regardless of your circumstances, make up for like 95% of where you get. Some people would say 100% of where you get. and correct me if I'm wrong, seem to think that personal decisions don't make up nearly as much of the trajectory as that. Is that fair? Is that an accurate summation? Because you yourself said like you got lucky. I don't believe that. I think that you're a smart, talented individual, and I think you worked hard and earned what you got. But you to sit here and say that you got lucky, I think means that you think there's a lot more to do with. Look, I don't think. Just look at generations in your own family, and I don't know if you can do that specifically, but like generations in my own family. I don't even know what my grandparents were like, let alone my great-grandparents. They could have been totally different people. I have no responsibility for what they did or thought, just in the same way that they have no responsibility for what I did and thought. It's just not like, it's just not a thing. I think and I believe that regardless of who you are, this is the best country in the world where your decisions make a difference. Is it perfect? No. Of course not. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. But find a better place that has come further than we have in terms of mending any racial gaps that continue to exist, and put more of an emphasis on personal responsibility and decisions than us.
Okay, I'm going to focus on one thing then. You said mending all the racial, discrimination, whatever the case is that
sure.
in this country, right? What does mending look like for you? Is it simply saying, oh, we used to say segregation, now we say no more segregation? Is that mending for you?
Mending to me is people ignoring the color of somebody's skin. That doesn't mean ignoring culture that people bring into society. It means the color of somebody's skin is completely out of the question.
You see, that's very fascinating because it's very, very narrow-minded. I'm not trying to be insulting or anything. I'm just trying to describe.
I don't know, man. Martin Luther King would agree with me.
I don't think so. I don't think he would.
He wants to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That's the position that I am.
Everyone that I talk to about this always brings up Martin Luther King as an example, right? And the thing is,
well, the CRT people don't like him. Like your Ibram X. Kendi, your Robin DiAngelo people, they don't like him, which is crazy to me. But
I don't know who the hell those people are, and honestly. I don't care. I understand what CRT is, and I understand the negative connotations that Republicans, conservatives have enclosed it in, right? And I know, I understand exactly what it is, and I understand that it's valuable. But that's a whole other conversation. But what I will say at the end of the day is, I was saying, my friend was talking about overcorrections, right? So it's like, we made this terrible mistake. We understand the context of the mistake. We understand the things that resulted from the mistake. So, for example, a millionaire or a billionaire is not simply a billionaire. They had to do a lot of shady shit to become that rich, right? Whether it's paying people pennies on the dollar at one country, taking advantage of kids, and doing this, that, and
hold on. Whoa.
No.
Hold on. Say that.
No. Oh, come on, bro. Let's be realistic. If you're pro-capitalist too, that's fine. I am to an extent, but let's talk about this, right? So they get to this status or this stage of success by taking advantage, a lot of the time taking advantage of people.
Well, I don't know what that means. Okay, wait, sorry.
Let me finish. Let me finish. So
okay.
that being the case, right? Fixing the issue is not simply saying, you can't take advantage of people again, right? You can't use your status in society to take advantage of people. That's a step in the right position, in the right direction, but we also have to look at the context of the time. What happened to those people, the victims? What happened to
taking advantage of somebody in the modern day? What does a business owner taking advantage of somebody look like?
Oh, there's a lot of labor theft going on, what is
that?
Many industries. What
is labor theft?
Oh, that's underpaying your workers. I'm not even saying in the legal sense, you're not paying the minimum wage. No, it's like, you worked overtime, I'm going to pay you a fraction of what that is. And then, what's going to happen? Or, you're working that requires a tip or that has tip as a.
This is fascinating. I would love to go into this more, but I got to run. Do you want to do this again? I would love to have the conversation about how the market works. Because I don't believe anybody's underpaid. If they agreed to do a job at the wage that they agreed to sell their time for, I don't believe that. And we don't have to talk about that right now.
We can have a whole conversation.
All right. All right. Well, shoot me a message. I got to run, but I appreciate you coming on, and maybe this can be a thing because I I genuinely and I don't mean this to sound like demeaning or like ageist, but there is a saying that, and I don't like terms necessarily, but I believe it was Churchill that said, if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative in your 30s, you have no brain. Have you ever heard that before? It seems like you have a very big heart. And
Yeah.
what I think, and maybe this, I don't know, maybe this is what I think, is that someday reality will rear its ugly head, and not necessarily diminishing how you want things to turn out, but understanding how realistic things are, as opposed to being idealistic. That's just what I think. Again, we can have a further conversation late, and kind of go into that.
I'll have my final statement on responding to what you said. So as an immigrant coming into this country, I came in like conservative as fuck, right? Sorry for the cursing, but I came in very conservative in my belief systems. But there's something that I've come to value more than anything else.
I want to hear what that means later next time, but sure.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
okay. But you came in conservative.
Yeah.
Your definition of conservative, sure.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to talk about that right now? Or?
No, I don't. I'm just saying I'm cataloging that for some time.
Oh yeah, later. No, I'm not going into that. But like the thing that, like you said, big heart. The thing that I value most of all is kindness, is caring about everyone else. I think the thing that makes us so amazing as human beings is the fact that we can communicate across country or across continents, whatever the case is, and just having that empathy, the kindness, the understanding, the trying to empathize with the experiences of one group or the other. That's an intelligence that we have that we need to utilize. I don't ever think I will change my mind and become conservative. I do have I still preserve some conservative beliefs. Of course, there are going to be some liberals in the comment section being like, oh my God, he's a conservative, he's Republican. I don't really give a shit, right? I have multitudes of diverse belief systems, and I always question it, right? In this case, I think you're in the wrong, but it's fine, right? We can discuss something else later on. It's fine. But yeah, that's my perspective, and hopefully, I don't know if someone took something away from this conversation.
Well, maybe, yeah, that could be an interesting thing to talk about in the future. Well, Cecil, hey, I appreciate it. Went way longer than
longer. We said 30 minutes.
Probably upset. But yeah, we'll keep in contact and maybe do so. I am fascinated on the capitalism side of the markets and stuff. But anyways, appreciate it, dude. You want people to be able to find you anywhere?
Please, Cecil Illustrates on Instagram. I draw. That's Cecil Illustrates. Can I type that in?
It doesn't. I can type it in the comments when this goes live.
Actually, let me confirm that, because I had an old one, Cecil Illustrates, and I think my new one, Cecil Illustrations. I think I'll just comment it, and then you can see it and type it.
Sure.
Let's see. There you go. Yep, Cecil Illustrates. I'll type that in. Illustrate. I think I spelled that right.
Okay. That'll go to the private chat. Yeah. This is when this goes up live. I'll put that in the comment section.
Right on.
Thank you. All right, dude. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right. See ya.
See you.